Okay, a little follow-up video. Since the videos about this little Harbor Freight Chicago welder have been somewhat popular on my YouTube channel, a lot of times there isn't much rhyme or reason on the amount of work I put into a video versus, I guess, what Google decides the relevance is. But I'll follow this up since it was apparently popular and there's a lot of questions about the welder. This is about almost a year or after the original video. This thing's out of warranty at this stage. Paid for itself many times over. This is my other welder, the Eastwood MIG 175. I used to carry this around in my truck a lot. It just that it gets heavy. It's a lot of stuff. I've kind of made room in the garage here to have room for it so that people come to me when the weather's decent. I'll do the work here. So this doesn't really go in my truck much anymore unless I'm kind of paid extra to take it with me. This little thing, it makes the majority of the money that I do with a quick fix on-call welding. And I would say that for do-it-yourselfers, small-scale projects, these things, they pay for themselves in about the second usage. Figure if you do this for money, okay, to use one of these machines, it's about $25 an hour, and you're not going to be able to weld that whole time because it's a low duty cycle machine. So also figure that one spool of wire ends up costing you at about 20 bucks, a little less than that if you get it on sale. You're going to want to use the 030, not the 035. And the only adjustments mainly you're going to do is your wire feed speed and of course your power. Most automotive welding, having those two power settings as opposed to a dial, which you would get on a more deluxe Eastwood machine, that's going to do 95% of what you do, okay? And the other 5%, you've got to justify the fact that you're going to be spending a lot more on that welder that you only use a much smaller percentage of the time, but it keeps you from having to call the outside people in. So modifications as these things age a little bit. One is, as you're looking at the welder from the front, I've removed the left side. The reason I removed the left side, and I may modify this a little bit further by cutting the side plate and maybe putting this section back on. But the big thing is to be able to reach this little assembly right here. This is an overheating sensor fuse assembly. What happens is the welder ages. This is intentionally the weak link in the system. What will happen as this thing heats up and becomes more sensitive to heat over time, and there's a big copper coil in here. So when these things are totally worn out, you can take that copper coil out of there, and it's actually almost 20 bucks worth of copper. So like I said, these things are smart man's tools. They pay for themselves. And if you buy the exact same thing over again, it's you can salvage a lot of parts out of one of these, because usually the part that goes bad is this part right here. Sometimes maybe the circuit board does. I'll be honest with you, I haven't had one of the circuit boards go bad. It's usually the feed mechanism just wears out. Okay, and like I said, I'll go get a new welder because these things just pay for themselves anyway. And if I need to start scavenging parts, I will. But on this little fuse thing, what will happen is this thing heats up and it curves out a little bit. As soon as you lose contact on these two points, then your little overheating indicator light comes on. Okay, that's your little overheating indicator light. That comes on and it stops the machine from working. It'll stop the machine from working until it cools off. Now there's a cooling fan that's going to run here pretty much continuously when it's turned on. If you unplug it to cool it down, then this cooling fan stops running. So what I found is you want to keep that cooling fan running, and it's just a basic little I don't know, brushless motor AC fan. Now preferably you want to do this with something that's non-conductive, like a little stick or twig or piece of plastic or something. But you have to do this while the machine's unplugged. You want to You want to ground your spark out a little bit on something, ground your wire out on something so that there's not the residual electricity in here. If there is and you get a spark, it's no big deal. It's just it'll bugger up your knife tip. But preferably use something that's like a little piece of hard plastic, a plastic piece of silverware. That works fine. And you grab this little thing with that. You don't bend it back really hard. You just flick it a few times to spring it. Okay, that's all you do is you flick it a couple times to spring it. It'll spring back and it'll work a little while before it overheats again. Now, if you're trying to weld all day, every day with these things, you're going to need about 3 of them so that you're running a cooling cycle on any 2 while you're using one of them. Okay, so if you're doing a more extensive welding job, you got to do it that way. But my experience has been I can get by with 1 to carry in a truck for these quick little half-hour jobs, because a lot of times it's, you know, it's 20 minutes, half hour to get there. It's 20 minutes, a half hour to get everything set up and ready to go, because we're doing a little bit of cutting and grinding to get things going. Then 20 minutes, a half hour of welding, just a few minutes at a time, and then clean up. And you know, like the last job I used this on, I was fixing a guy's lawnmower. And we did a really good job of reinforcing some weak points on there using some steel that he had laying around the farm. So, you know, just fine for that kind of stuff. The other thing I'll do is, eventually what happens is these little hinge holes that the top is secured with, either they bugger up or the plastic handle breaks off. So if you remove the top entirely, you can eyeball how your feed mechanism is working and make little adjustments as you go, like maybe tightening it a little or something, or loosening it. And so a lot of times what I'll do is I'll stop and I'll flip up the door. Today I just took that door off entirely. One of the sides of the hinge was bad anyways. I just took it off entirely. Now, if you really want to save weight on this, you could maybe cut some of this off. I don't. Okay, but you could maybe make a rounded cut here. The thing is, I want my strap, when I set this down, I want the strap out of the way. The other thing is, I need the strap over on the side where I'm leaving the plate in place. Okay, and that's just so I can you know, hike this around a little bit, because I took the door and the handle off. If I were to put a much smaller strap on with a handle, I could do that too. I mean, it wouldn't be wrong to do it that way. You can kind of sort of cram a larger spool on one of these. It's just not smart to do so. These things will bird's nest on you really badly. But there are people that adapt them to work with a larger spool. I won't. Okay. And usually when you get the Flux-cored wire, it only comes in these smaller spools anyway. But that's a year later. You know, how does this thing work? Paid for itself many times over. It'll probably burn up this summer. No big deal. I'm going to go get another one. But for now, I'm going to use it for some mobile applications. I've kind of stripped it down a little bit. I'm probably just going to weld a rod on here diagonally, because it's a little shaky with that side plate removed. But it still works. They're still pretty good to go for what they do. And you know, I'll link back to the original video encouraging people to get one of these and learn a little bit of welding. And I would definitely recommend these if you've got a teenage son who you know, maybe plays around with a little bit of hobby stuff and you want him to learn how to make money. There's nothing I do with this thing that a 16-year-old couldn't do. I'll be honest with you. A 16-year-old could do everything I do on these things. I would say this machine alone has accounted for about $3,000 in the last year of my income. A teenager could do that, you know, and there's so much work out there for light scale, small scale welding that the big guys aren't going to take time to screw around with. I'm not shooting myself in you know, I'm not shooting myself on market share on this. There's plenty of work out there for people that want to, you know, let's say repair some of this furniture, repair those jacks, fix metal toolboxes, fix furniture, fix legs or loose, you know, anytime you got loose stuff like on a barbecue grill like that, you can firm up a lot of stuff that's normally bolted together or just set together. firm it up by welding it. Is what I did with this little welding cart. Stiffened it